This is a shadow box. When Clay got out of the Marines, we wanted to give him something to commemorate that, and he had found this shadow box on a website, and he wanted that. So we got this for him, and he put all this in here. It's the different medals and ribbons that he wore, and his flag, and then these are his platoon, the sniper platoon, and then these are the 4 guys, his 4 buddies that he lost. And he kept this in his apartment, by his front door, and every day, just every day thought about the guys he had lost and the guys he had served with.
War is just what it is. The smell of burning bodies, seeing people that are blown apart or dismembered, just those things alone are going to make you different than the person that hasn't experienced those things.
The problem has been there since the first war, period. People have suffered from PTS. They didn't call it that. I guess the title in World War II was shell shock.
From the beginning of human warfare, issues that we now call post-traumatic stress disorder have been around. So if we look back at, for example, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, he talks there about people returning with the fog of war and feeling disconnected from other people and unable to reintegrate.
I was unable to pursue what I had chosen for a field, which was going to be zoologist or a veterinarian.
Hello, Matilda.
2 marriages, and my social acceptance is rather limited by my behavioral patterns. So it's changed my life. It hasn't cost my life, but it's made me wonder often, had I not experienced what I had, where I would be today in my life.
We were together for 3 years before we entered into marriage, and obviously that wasn't enough time for me to understand what I was getting into. The challenges are daily, sometimes hourly, and the kinds of things that I'm up against are blurry because they could be anything. They could look like a bad mood, but it's really a reaction to a big crowd. I never know.
Trouble sleeping, flashbacks, nightmares, just a lot of reliving moments, I guess.
There are 3 main categories of symptoms in PTSD. The re-experiencing symptoms, the avoidance symptoms, and the arousal symptoms. And those are things like being keyed up or on edge all the time, what we call hypervigilance.
Between my dogs in the daytime and my geese at night, nothing moves around here that I don't know about. They're my little centuries. I don't have to pay them. They work cheap. The biggest thing that I found when I came back was that whenever I'd be in a social settings, I spent too much time analyzing people. Always within sight of a door, very aware of what's going on around me. Found myself listening to conversations, not just one conversation, 5, 6 conversations, or anything being said that I need to be concerned about. And then I started learning a lot more about PTSD and realized that hypervigilance that's a real common thing. And so it's like, so what can I do to help curve that? Well, the easiest thing is just not to go out. That's the easiest thing to do, but that doesn't get you healthy. That just gets you by. If you were a fairly social person before and you're not social now, you're really going to miss that. There's going to be a lot of anxiety and anger that comes from that because you're not doing some of the things you used to do, because it's uncomfortable to do those things. You can't completely isolate yourself, but you do need some space, to spend down. And this is my space. One of these days I'm going to run out of things to do here except for cutting grass, and then I'm going to be in trouble. As my wife said, she's like, oh, and then what? I said, well, I'll have to build something else.
In World War II, people served generally in units. And when they left Europe or left the Pacific, they came home on boats, on ships. There was a downtime, a decompressing time. In this particular situation, a guy can be in combat and in a firefight on Monday, and on Wednesday he walks in and tells his wife and his kids hello.
Somebody gave me this as a going away thing, my rag. It's really a prayer rug, I think.
David's always been very open to talk about what's going on with him or what's happening, but I think at the time he had no idea. He had no clue that he was acting differently, because in a war zone he was acting perfectly functional and exactly the way he needed to be. So I think it's very unfair for them to fly home for 2 weeks, to step straight off a plane and then be walking around at Walmart, and we don't expect them to hit the floor. One of the first things I noticed was how quickly he got stressed out when he was driving, or how angry he could become over very small things. And of course, called my dad to talk to him about it, because he could tell me, yeah, this is exactly what he's feeling or what he's thinking. He spent time in Vietnam and Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. My dad has always been vocal about saying, we've gone to war, but we came back to a country that didn't want to hear our story or didn't want to know what was going on. So he's tried very, very hard to be there for David and make it a positive experience instead of what he went through. When David started going on so many deployments, my father's symptoms increased more and more. And then to have my dad be diagnosed around the same time that my husband was diagnosed was kind of mind-blowing. So they've literally gone through the process of being diagnosed and working through that as well, in terms of counseling and getting help with the VA and things like that. So they've been on this journey together from the moment he signed his papers. You're definitely the favorite. People always think the welcome home ceremony is the end of the story, and it's just the beginning of another war. The cameras roll and we hug and kiss and everybody feels better, except we go home and start a new battle.
This is one of my favorites. I think this was Iraq, actually, and this was just a stray dog that found its way into Clay's lap. It's just so hard to have it sink in that he's one of those veterans that we've lost. We've just lost him.
Clay Hunt was born here in Houston, Texas in 1982, and he would have been 29 years old on April the 18th. And unfortunately, he took his own life on March the 31st.
People say, what else could he have done? What could have happened that could have prevented this? And he was doing everything that he could think of to help himself.
He's gone to see the VA doctors. He was getting medicine, taking the right steps. He seemed to be assimilating back into society. So I think that what we know about this disease, and there's still obviously a lot to know about it, the post-traumatic stress disorder, is that it can creep up on these veterans, catch them at a weak moment, and lead them to suicide.
A really, really holistic type of program needs to be put into place somehow by a whole lot of different people. Our eyes have been opened by this event, and we can't turn away from it.
This was his quote. He said, "If I had one thing to say to my fellow veterans, it would be this: continue to serve, even though we have taken off our uniforms. No matter how great or small your service is, it is desired and needed by the world we live in. It doesn't matter what it is, only that you continue to put others before yourself. That is the only way to bring about the social change that our country and our world so desperately needs." And that was, he believed that with all his heart. He did.